Australia appoints envoy to curb anti-Semitism. Zelenskyy discusses further NATO support with Polish PM. Former Brazilian president embezzled $1.2 million in Saudi jewelry. Pope warns democracy is in bad health. Landslides on Indonesia's Sulawesi island. NASA's Mars simulator crew emerged after 378 days.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It's Wednesday, July 10th, and here are your top stories. The Australian government named a special envoy Tuesday to confront a rise in anti-Semitism across the country since the Israel-Hamas war began. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said a similar envoy will soon be appointed to challenge Islamophobia in Australia, and both will promote social cohesion. His own Sydney office has been targeted with pro-Palestinian graffiti as rival activists clash over the Israeli-Hamas war in Australian cities and on university campuses. Albanese appointed Julian Siegel, a Sydney lawyer and business executive, to be the special envoy to combat anti-Semitism in Australia for 3 years.
She will consult with community groups and report back to Albanese and Multicultural Affairs Minister Andrew Giles. Siegel called statistics on anti-Semitism in Australia shocking. Reports of anti-Semitism spiked 700% immediately after Hamas militants attacked Israel on October 7th and are still running 400% to 500% higher than before the conflict. Siegel said the reports include Jewish-owned businesses being boycotted and vandalized, as well as Jewish artists being excluded or subjected to social media shadow bans that restrict their visibility. She added, "Unfortunately, there is no single answer to the perennial problem of anti-Semitism. But the creation of this role shows a determination by the government to confront this evil and to ensure that it does not erode the goodness that exists in our society."
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said Monday that he expects the upcoming NATO summit to provide specific steps to strengthen his country's air defenses against Russia, hours after a missile attack killed at least 31 people and wounded 154 others, including at a children's hospital in Kyiv. Zelenskyy met with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in Warsaw to discuss further NATO support for Ukraine and to sign a bilateral cooperation and defense document. Zelenskyy emphasized, "We would like to see greater resolve in our partners and hear resolute responses to these attacks," stressing that Ukraine will take its own retaliatory steps.
Zelenskyy stopped in Warsaw en route to a NATO summit, which begins Tuesday in Washington, marking the Western Defense Alliance's 75th anniversary. Leaders are expected to discuss ways of providing reliable long-term security aid and military training for Ukraine more than 2 years after Russia's full-scale invasion. At the start of the news conference with Tusk, Zelenskyy asked those gathered to observe a moment of silence for the victims of Monday's airstrikes. Tusk offered every available form of help for the children evacuated from the bombed hospital. The two leaders signed a cooperation and defense agreement that spells out Poland's continued support for Ukraine in defense, especially air defense, energy security for Ukraine, and Poland's participation in reconstruction.
According to the investigative report unsealed Monday by the Supreme Court, Brazil's federal police allege former President Jair Bolsonaro embezzled jewelry worth 6.8 million Brazilian reals during his time in office. Bolsonaro was indicted last week on charges of embezzlement, asset laundering, and criminal association in connection with the luxury jewelry from Saudi Arabia. The investigation adds pressure on the far-right leader who governed from 2019 to 2022 before losing his re-election bid, and he has already lost his political rights until 2030.
Bolsonaro hasn't commented on the indictment but has previously denied any wrongdoing involving the jewelry. The police report alleges a criminal association for the embezzlement of high-value gifts that were received due to the position of former President Jair Bolsonaro. The jewelry included diamond-encrusted Rolex and Patek Philippe watches, a necklace, rings, and cufflinks, among other items. The report says some of the presents were given to government staffers acting on Bolsonaro's behalf during international trips. Brazil's Prosecutor General, Paulo Gonet, will analyze the police report and decide whether to file charges and force the far-right leader to stand trial.
Pope Francis denounced populist politics and what he called the dross of ideology on Sunday, warning that democracy was not in good shape in many parts of the world. The 87-year-old Pope was in the northeastern city of Trieste for a flying visit, his fourth trip within Italy in just over 2 months as he prepares for a 12-day journey across Asia in September, the longest of his papacy. Speaking at an annual Roman Catholic convention on social affairs, Francis said many people feel excluded from democracy, with the poor and the weak left to fend for themselves.
He said, "It is evident that democracy is not in good health in today's world," denouncing polarization and partisanship. Ideologies are seductive. Some people compare them to the Pied Piper of Hamelin. They seduce you, but they lead you to deny yourself, referring to a fairy tale where a rat catcher uses his magic powers to steal away a town's children. He mentioned the crisis of democracy, affecting various nations, but did not give any specific examples. The Pope was speaking on the day France holds a parliamentary runoff election, with the far-right National Rally expected to take the biggest share of the vote, following gains by populist parties in European Union elections last month.
A landslide triggered by torrential rains crashed onto an unauthorized gold mining operation on Indonesia's Sulawesi island, killing at least 12 people, with dozens of others reported missing. The head of the Search and Rescue Office said more than 100 villagers were digging for grains of gold on Sunday in the remote Bun Bolango district when tons of mud plunged down the surrounding hills and buried their makeshift camps. He said 44 people managed to escape from the landslide, with some pulled out alive by rescuers, including 6 injured. Rescuers recovered 12 bodies and 48 others are still missing.
National Disaster Management Agency spokesperson Abdul Muhari said torrential rains that have pounded the area since Saturday also breached an embankment, causing floods of up to 3 meters in 5 villages in Bone Bolongo. Nearly 300 houses were affected, and more than 1,000 people have fled for safety. Informal mining operations are common in Indonesia, providing a tenuous livelihood to thousands who labor in conditions with a high risk of serious injury or death. Landslides, flooding, and collapses of tunnels are just some of the hazards facing miners. Much of the gold ore processing involves highly toxic mercury and cyanide, and workers frequently use little or no protection.
For over a year, 4 crew members participating in NASA's Mars Dune Alpha simulated experience communicated, ate, slept, and researched as if they were stationed over 200 million miles away on the Red Planet. The mission began on June 25, 2023, marking the first completed installment of 3 planned programs from NASA's Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, and lasted 378 days. They received a round of applause over the weekend as they emerged from the 1,700 square foot 3D printed habitat at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
The program was designed to research how crew members would respond to the conditions and constraints of a year-long mission, as NASA plans potential manned missions to Mars by the 2030s. Simulated spacewalks, robotic operations, habitat maintenance, exercise, and crop growth were among the crew members' daily activities during the mission. The next CHAPEA mission is scheduled for spring 2025, with the third expected to begin in 2026. To qualify for the program, volunteers must be healthy, non-smoking U.S. citizens or permanent residents between the ages of 30 and 55, proficient in English, and hold a master's degree with STEM qualifications or have at least 1,000 hours of piloting experience or equivalent military experience.
The answer for yesterday was C, compliance. Inspectors were sent to visit nuclear sites and verify compliance with the treaty. Did you answer correctly? Now let's delve into the news of NASA's Mars simulator crew emerged after 378 days. Number 1, simulate. 用电脑或模型等模拟. Computer software can be used to simulate conditions on the seabed. Number 2, constraint. 限制、限定、约束. This decision will impose serious constraints on all schools. Number 3, applause. 鼓掌喝彩. The audience broke into rapturous applause. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comment section. The correct answer will be announced tomorrow. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I'll see you next time.